All right, it is the top of the hour, so we'll start our webinar. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us this week. If you were able to join us last week, thanks for joining us again. If you weren't able to join us last week, hang tight. I'll make sure you get a quick link for last week's recorded webinar. Today's webinar is all about collaborating in Drive. So get in the G Suite groove, collaborate and drive is the long title of it. We'll focus mainly on Drive today, but as you know, some of my favorite things about G Suite are kind of the combination of tools. We'll talk a little bit about how Drive interplays with some of the other tools within G Suite. My name is Nick. I'll be leading today's session. I'm a change manager here at Agosto, and again, I want to express my gratitude for all of you joining us today and spending roughly 30 minutes talking about Drive. There may be some review for some of you, but hang tight. We're going to dive into some new tips and tricks. I'm sure some of you will learn a lot throughout today's session. Let's hop into housekeeping, and then we'll let folks filter in still. Looks like we got a lot of folks joining still. So quick housekeeping note, or logistics, if you will. Just like last week, if you joined us, if you have questions throughout today's session, a lot of people use Q&A last week. That worked great. Otherwise, use chat, type your questions in, and I'll save some time at the end where I can start answering some, if not all, of those questions that come in. Hang tight at the end too. I'm going to ask a question of all of you as well. So I might ask for your participation. No pressure, nothing big expected of you, just a little bit of participation at the end to make future webinars a little bit better. Speaking of webinars, so last week we ran a webinar, and I want to make sure y'all have the link to that. Last week's webinar was all about Hangouts Chat and Hangouts Meet. I'm going to send that link through the chat window. Don't watch it now. Stick with us here. Watch this webinar now, and then later on, feel free to watch that if you missed it. Let's talk about this week now. So I told you it's about Drive, but let's dive into some goals. This slide might look familiar for some of you. The big number on the right is really why we're doing this. This is unprecedented, right? Almost all of us are working from home at this point. And for most of us, that's brand new. And what most people say when they do their best work, it's because they're collaborating with others. And so our goal with these webinars is to give you the tools, but also the tips and tricks to be able to continue collaborating effectively with your colleagues, even though you're not in the same office or in the same room anymore. So really that feel more at work while working from home. It's something that we are all doing. You can see I got my camera on today to make sure that you can all see I'm still working from home as well. And I'm sure most of you are also. So today is all about Drive. So we're going to dive into Drive first by talking about Drive sharing. You can't collaborate with others in Drive unless you feel comfortable with how Drive sharing works. So that's where we're going to start. And then we're going to go into some of the tips within Docs specifically, but the tips will be universal for all Drive tools. So even though I'm in Docs today, don't think you can't use these in Sheets or Slides. And then, like I said, I like the interplay of G Suite tools. So I'm going to show you how Drive works in other tools, maybe Gmail or Hangouts Chat. If you've been leveraging that for the past week, you'll see how Drive can interplay with that. So a lot to cover. I'm going to dive right into it just so I don't spend a ton of time in slides. I'm going to go into my Drive right now. That's over here. I already have it open. If you've never gone to Drive, which I think most of you probably have, but if you haven't, it's as simple as going to drive.google.com. You'll see that link in the chat. Otherwise, as you all know, in all of your Google tools, all your G Suite tools, you have this little icon here near the upper right-hand corner. Some people call it the waffle. It doesn't really look like a waffle any longer, but you could still call it that. Look for Drive in there. And again, from any of your G Suite tools, you can access that waffle. Once you're in Drive, it's all about first understanding how sharing works, so then you can start collaborating with your colleagues. Again, you're not in the same room with them. You're not even in the same building with them any longer. So how can we be in Drive, working and productive while also getting that live collaboration, or maybe not even live collaboration, but that collaboration with the people who we need to be working with. Now, the first thing I want to talk about before we even get into sharing is just a quick reminder on my screen here. you might see some things that you don't have on your screen. I don't want you to panic. For instance, one thing that I'm going to highlight quickly here is shared drives. Some of you definitely have shared drives, some of you don't. So today I'm going to spend my time in my drive, which you all have, with the understanding that if you have shared drives, the features I talk about will work in shared drives. And if you don't have shared drives, you're not going to miss out on any of the tips and tricks we talk about today. Hopefully that gives you a level set. So if you see something on my screen, don't think to yourself, I don't have that. Everything I talk about today will be available to all of you. So within my drive, if you're in your my drive as well, you might be looking at something similar to this, right? And your view might be a little different, but you're seeing some folders and files. At a glance, the first thing to know is I can share folders or files. And if I've shared a folder in the past, I will have a visual indicator that that's a shared folder. And so if you're looking at your drive and you're wondering, what am I already collaborating with folks on? Anything that has a silhouette on it from a folder perspective is shared already. And we're going to show you all the steps Google makes or takes to make sure that you're aware that things are shared. But that's the first thing, right? That visual indicator that a folder has been shared. What does it mean if a folder's been shared? Well, every file within that folder inherits the permissions of the folder. So if, for instance, I have this folder here, attendance, all the files within it, of course, are shared files because they're in a shared folder. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Hopefully that's review for you. Now, I'm not going to go into like sharing a specific folder. I'm going to go back into my drive. And I want to dive into just the specifics around sharing a file and checking visual indicators in that to make sure that we are collaborating and sharing those files. So the first thing I should say is let's make a new document. And one of the tips that a colleague of mine loves, and I kind of love it too, is anytime you're making just a quick doc or a sheet or a slide, you don't have to be in Drive even. If you're in a window in any browser, but Chrome's our preferred browser, just type in doc.new. It's going to create a new document in your My Drive. It won't be shared with anyone by default, and it's just going to be a fresh document. It's that easy. Slide.new and sheet.new work as well. So the first thing I want you to do once you're creating anything is name it. You know that everything saves automatically in Drive. And so if you start creating a ton of documents or sheets or slides and don't name them, you're going to have a mess. And if you start sharing those things, it's going to be very hard for your colleagues to understand contextually what these documents are about. So in the upper left-hand corner, you probably know that. That's where you're going to name it. It's going to save that right away. And then immediately we're going to look in the upper right-hand corner here. This is our visual indicator in a doc, a sheet, or a slide of the sharing status of this file. If I see a lock on it, I know that this has been shared with no one. It's private to me. I can hover over it and you're going to get that little indicator or that confirmation that, yep, it's private to me only. Click on this button. You know this. This is where you're going to share it. Pretty simple at this point, right? I'll share it with my buddies Jim and Stanley. I might get some more suggestions here. We'll ignore those. As a best practice, we're all about giving a little context when you're sharing a file. So maybe you just write a quick note. I'd usually add a little bit more context, but for time's sake, we'll do that. And then you click send. And immediately that file's been shared. And now you can really start collaborating within this document. Now, on the reverse end, what do Jim and Stanley see? They'll get an email and then they can enter that file as well. They could also go to shared with me. If I go back to my drive right here, and they'll see that file there also. Now our visual indicator obviously has changed also. If I go back into the document, I'm going to see that silhouette there. And if I hover over it, it'll give me just a brief description of the sharing status. And at any point, whether it's a doc, a sheet, or a slide, you click into that, click on advanced, and this is where you get the full picture of sharing. Now, I told you it was going to be a crash course. That is a crash course in sharing in Drive. There's obviously a lot more nuance to it, but I wanted to make sure we all understood the basics of sharing. I'm going to click done here. I'm actually going to close this go back into my drive, and we're going to dive into some of those key tips and tricks now that we think are valuable once you've shared a file to actually start collaborating live in those files. And the best thing to think about from a high level is, docs and sheets and slides give you the best in class collaboration tools at your fingertips. They're really built from the ground up to collaborate. We don't want to all be working from home. We want to be able to go back to the office, right? We want this to go back to some sense of normalcy, but in the meantime, know that the tools that you are using today are designed for situations like this where you aren't in the same room or the same building as your colleagues, and you can still be effective, get their input, give input, and work within what you have. So let's start with creating another doc. And in this case, I'm going to go into a shared folder. We know it's shared because we see that silhouette. Once you're in a shared folder at any point, if you maybe shared it a while ago, you're wondering what the heck, who did I share it with? In the shared folders, you'll always be able to hover over these silhouettes and see the list of folks who have access. This one's very simple. Pay attention to this though. This is who we're going to be interacting with. My buddy Nick, assistant, and myself are the only two people who have access to this folder. So if I create something in it, like I go to new, I go to docs, and actually I don't want to create a blank document. I go over here to from a template. Google's going to warn me because it's a shared folder. So it's going to say, yeah, do you want to create this in a shared folder? We just verified that only Nick Assistant and myself have access, so that's great. So I'm going to say, yeah, I do. I'm going to create and share. That's just another way that Google's reminding you, hey, when you create this, you're going to have to be ready to collaborate right away. And then it's going to take you to this template gallery. Now, if you've never used templates before, whether it's docs, sheets, or slides, that's my homework. I told you no homework. That's my homework for today. I want you to go back to your work from home desk. You're already at it. And create something with a template from today. Now, you're looking at the best part of templates, which is each of your own domains. You can have templates already uploaded in there. So these are templates that your colleagues created, or maybe you created that you want to use often. They're already in here, or you can submit new ones. Over here under the General tab, you have the list of kind of Google's created templates. These are great as well. Now we're in Docs, but keep in mind, this is available for Sheets and Slides also. So instead of starting with that blank document and then entering all the information that you need, you start with this leg up. Now, I like the template that we have over on here on Agosto demo, so I'm going to use that. So I'm going to just click Notes Template, excuse me. It's going to open that up. And the first thing I want you all to do, you know this, you got to rename it, right? Because it's not a notes template anymore. Now this is your document. So we're just going to call this Work from Home Notes. Easy enough. And the other thing we got to check, we created it in a shared folder. So as a reminder, we are already collaborating. So I go over here to my share button. I see that it's shared with one person. Who's that one person? You know this. It's our buddy Nick Assistant. He's going to be interacting with us in a little bit here. He's okay. All right, so we're going to click done. So we're already able to start collaborating with Nick Assistant, and this is where it gets really good, right? So we've leveraged this template. You're thinking, gosh, Nick, this template's not that great. You're totally right, but some of them can be way better than this. Just hang with me on that. Explore the templates, create your own templates. I need Nick's assistance now. And so at Agosto, we use comments all the time. It's almost overwhelming how often we use comments. I need to start using comments to collaborate better. So the first thing I'll show you is highlight any text in a doc, a sheet, or a slide. On the right side, click the Add a Comment button, and I can add a comment. Boy, it's not even close to a word. Okay, so the comment goes in there. Now, anyone else who has access to the document will be able to see that. I think most folks are pretty comfortable with that. I'm just gonna get myself set over here. What most folks don't know is that like a comment like this out to the entire audience of this document can be effective, but what you might not know is you can actually, I'm going to create another comment, single out specific people. And so I need Nick Assistant to take a look at the attendees. So I'm going to say at Nick, it's going to give me the full list. You know I work with a lot of Nicks. Nick Assistant's my guy in this case. I can even take it a step further and say assign to Nick. What does that do? That means it's going to trigger an email that's going to go out to Nick saying, hey, there's a task assigned to you in this document. There's going to be a link that he can click on, and then he can immediately see that, click on it, and take himself right to this spot in the document. If it's a 40-page document, it would take him right to this spot as well. So without him even being in this document, he's already starting to collaborate with me. So now he's going to get that alert. You're going to see he's going to join here in a moment. And maybe he's got some ideas for this. So first off, we know how collaboration works. We can see Nick's in the document now. Right there he is. So now let's say he says, so waiting on info. So he replies to my first comment. We're going to see that chain right there. So now everyone in the document can see that Nick and Nick are working on this. And then the other one down here, maybe he fills that out, right? So attendees, he says, oh, it's going to be Jim and Stanley. And then he can check it off. Now on his screen, what he's seeing is he's just going to check this off right here, right? So he's just going to click that check and it's going to go away. It's going to be considered accomplished. Now all of this, I think, is incredibly powerful. So we're in the document, maybe not even at the same time, we're still able to communicate without leaving that document. I get a lot of questions on comments from folks who say, that seems great, but it's very ephemeral, as in I lose the history of it, right? Nick, maybe I resolve this one here. I lose the entire history of that. And there's some good stuff in comments as well. The good news for you is that comments don't just disappear. They actually live in this right here. Next to your share button in whatever doc, sheet, or slide you're in, you click this button here. It's going to give you the full history of comments. Who created the comment? What text was selected? When was it created? Who replied? Who resolved it? If it was assigned to someone, all of that lives in that comment history. So you don't lose the effects of that collaboration just because a comment gets resolved. So that's an incredible tool that hopefully you can start leveraging today, so you don't have to get on as many meetings. You can start doing that work right away. The other thing that we leverage a lot, if we're in the document together already, I can see Nick's in here. I can click this button right here. And so instead of maybe doing a comment, I can just throw a chat out to him and say, can you add some discussion? And so within the document, I can start chatting with Nick. I don't have to send him an email. I don't have to start a Hangouts meet. I don't have to go to Hangouts chat, a separate tool, which we know we love that tool. We can actually just use chat within this. Nick on his other screen here is going to see a little alert. He's going to be able to respond. Absolutely. Should have chosen a different word because he's going to struggle to spell that. Perfect. And so now we can see his response right there. So chat is incredibly powerful. And another way that you can collaborate within the tool without actually leaving the tool to find something else. Okay, so we know Nick's got to add some notes into discussion. Great. Nick's notes here. And we can see it happening live. Hopefully that's review for all of you as well. Okay, so we have the history of comments. We have the live comments. We have this chat. The other question that I get a lot is I don't want to share it with as many colleagues because I'm afraid they're going to make changes that we can't undo or make changes that I'm not happy with. And in a time like today, we probably need to share it with more colleagues, right? Get more input, be able to collaborate more with our colleagues. So the risk of oversharing, at least internally with colleagues, we want to mitigate that. And so the best way that I can think to mitigate that is to be aware of version history. So this is a brand new document, not much in it, but if I go over to File and I go to Version History and click See Version History, it's going to open up the short but entire version history of this file. Now, you can imagine if this was a 2-year-old file, 50 pages long, this would be a lot longer, but here I have 2 versions, right? The one I created, and then the edits that Nick made. But the key thing here to understand is I can see all those edits. I hover over the edits, I can see, yep, Nick Assistant made those. If I have multiple people in the document, I can see who's making specific edits. And I can restore previous versions, go back to March 31st at 1:12 and completely erase what Nick has done if he made a mistake, or if he erased everything, restore what was erased. It's an incredibly powerful tool. And one other thing to know is you can name these versions as well. So if I want to name this original document, I can do that. And then that will always live there as kind of the original document, named version. So version history is the save of sharing with your colleagues. You need to share to collaborate. And if something bad happens, you don't have to panic. Go to version history. You can restore or undo what was done. So please continue to leverage collaboration in docs without the fear of losing that history. Now, back to the document itself. The other tip that I have, I actually do end up in a lot of meetings with my colleagues, and we use docs, sheets, and slides a lot, right? And we reference specific spots on the document throughout calls. Maybe it's with a client or just an internal call. And this is a one-page document here. You're gonna see Nick Assistant make some changes here. So there's not much going on here. But if Nick says to me, hey, can you just jump to section 8? Or hey, can you jump to page 20? That's not easy to do, right? And so at any point, if you're collaborating with someone, click on their face within the document. It will take you to their cursor. Now again, this is a 2-page document, not a big deal. If it's 40 pages though, that saves a ton of time. And I'm not hunting and pecking. If he's highlighting something, like he goes back and highlights attendees, I click on it, it takes me right to that spot. So it gives you that brief, quick way of getting to a specific spot in a document without hunting and pecking around. A couple other tips for you. Collaboration doesn't just happen live, as we're seeing right now with me and Nick. It can happen when you're seeing comments and you're saying, I don't understand what Nick's saying in the comment, I need to meet with him. Well, great news. In all of your tools, you have access to your calendar right here. Click on the right side here. You can access your calendar and you can quickly create a meeting, a one-on-one with Nick to just go over this document. Now, if you're not seeing these 3 options here, on the very bottom, this little arrow here, click that, and then you'll see those options. Again, you click into it, you can create a meeting really quickly. It's going to actually pull the title of the document you're in as the meeting title. I can add guests down here. Nick's not going to be too happy with me to do a 5 o'clock meeting, but that's okay. I'll click save and send. And then we can have a meeting about this document right from this document without me leaving it. So it's a super powerful tool, and that's available in all of your G Suite tools as well. So even if you're not with Nick in the document, you can still grab him, set a meeting, and talk about it later on. The other thing that I've been using a lot, I know we're running out of time here, I'll keep it quick, is the outline. In Docs, this is the only thing that's specific to Docs. It lives on the left side here. It allows you to quickly jump to specific spots in the document. Now again, it's a 1-page document here, but as you're creating new text in your document, just make it a heading. As you do that, it becomes part of the outline and it allows people to quickly jump to that section within the file or the doc without hunting again around for specific spots. So I say to Nick, hey, can you check the discussion? Boom, clicks on the discussion in his outline, it takes him right there. It just facilitates that quick collaboration that often is needed, especially on client calls or internal calls. Now, before I open the floor to all of you asking questions, which I haven't seen a ton yet, if you have questions, ask them in Q&A or chat. I want to talk about how Drive works with other G Suite tools. And the first spot is Gmail. And so keep in mind, we're working in this file right here, work from home notes. I'll just close it. I'm going to go to Gmail. We know that that's shared with Nick Assistant only. I need to send that to Jim and Stanley, for instance. Great. I go to Gmail, I initiate a new email, sending it to Jim and Stanley, giving them maybe a little context here. At the bottom here, you probably have seen this button. Maybe you've used it in the past. It's the insert files using Drive. When you click on that, it's going to open up your Drive picker. Now, you can easily get bogged down in here. You could easily get bogged down with search in your Drive picker. Don't. If you were just working on a file and you went to your email, click recent. That's going to show you your most recently referenced or opened files. We're going to see work from home notes is right there. I'm going to insert it. Now, my second tip for you here is, because you're in this G Suite world, we know that this file is not shared with Jim and Stanley, but maybe I forgot. I'm moving quick to the next meeting. I didn't think about that. I'm going to click send. It's going to prompt me. It's going to say this is not shared with these two folks. We need to share it with them. From here, I can control, okay, share with two people. Let's give them edit permission. Click send. You're wondering, how fast does that take? If I go back into that file, it's already been shared with them. It's that quick. It's quicker than my computer is. Stanley and Jim both have edit permission right in there. So the beauty of working in Drive with all of your other G Suite tools is they talk to each other. They're going to keep each other honest. So if it's not shared with someone, it'll get shared with them. Now, the other tool that you know I love is chat. I go to chat.google.com. I want to share this with someone else, right? Well, from chat, I don't need to leave chat to share a file with them. Simply click, you can see I'm practicing, click your Drive icon near the lower right-hand corner here. It's going to pull up that same Drive picker. You all are experts now. You know that we click recent, we locate that file, we click select here now. In chat, if it's not shared with someone, it's not going to give you the ability to necessarily change the permissions, but it is going to give you automatically the ability to just give them comment level permission. So I can give Lizzie a little context, click send, and she is immediately going to have access to that. Again, if we want to verify, we go back to our work from home notes doc, locate Lizzie, she's got comment. Of course, we could change that to edit right from there. So the interplay between these tools makes collaboration even easier. Now, I went 2 minutes over my promised time of 25 minutes. I want to wrap it up, but I also want you all to ask me questions. So if you have questions, pop them in the chat, pop them into Q&A. Otherwise, as we wrap up today, I want to encourage you, keep checking your email. We want to continue doing webinars like this. We want you all to continue coming to webinars like this. I shared out the link from last week's webinar. Spread that out to your colleagues. Let them view that. We're recording today's webinar. We're going to make sure you get that link as well. The second thing I want is I want your ideas, and you can see I wrote it here. What do you all want to know more about? Do you want to know more about Google Tasks? Do you want to know more about leveraging Google Keep? Do you want to know how to use Calendar to collaborate effectively? What will you get the most benefit out of going forward? So the chat is open. The chat room's open. Type your ideas in there or type your questions in there. I'll stick around for a couple minutes here and answer any questions, or hopefully get some ideas from all of you. Otherwise, thanks for joining again. If you joined last week, thanks for joining the first time. If it's this week, please join us again next week. And stay safe and stay healthy and keep looking to us for resources going forward. Thanks, everyone.